Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Olia, and I lead developer experience at Rootstock Labs. Rootstock is the first and longest running Bitcoin sidechain. What makes Rootstock special is that it is fully EVM compatible, so you can write your smart contract in Solidity. And of course, there's a lot of libraries and tools that are EVM compatible that you can use building on Rootstock. We've created this particular series to walk you through some of the tools and integrations to make sure that you are fully equipped for building on Bitcoin with Rootstock. Today, we're talking about a wonderful project called Alchemy. Alchemy is used by developers all over the world. They've got a great developer community. And on top of that, of course, tons of very useful features. And today we have Sahil with us from Alchemy, who will tell us about the project, but also will show us how to deploy smart contracts with Alchemy. And also, I think we're going to go through a full dApp creation. All right, cool. Let's kick in. Sahil, very welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Sahil. I am a DevRel engineer here at Alchemy. Alchemy is the complete Web3 development platform, and I'm super excited for this session.
Yeah, awesome. Me too. All right, so shall we dive into your presentation, Sahil?
Yep, absolutely. I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna dive right in. So, I've prepared these slides for our session today, just a few slides. So, let's just get started. We're gonna talk about blockchain, alchemy, and rootstock in this session. Let's quickly look at our agenda for today. We will be talking about, first of all, what is Alchemy. I will explain in detail. And then we will look at all of the services that we provide here at Alchemy. We will do kind of a deep dive into Node APIs, Read APIs, which are created by Alchemy, the Read APIs. And then finally, we will build a dApp on Rootstock using Alchemy and AI tools. And you will see that we won't even have to code this app ourselves. And I will show you how easy it is to build a dApp on Rootstock using Alchemy just in a few clicks, just in a few minutes. Let's get started. I'm super excited. So, what is Alchemy? Alchemy is the complete platform for Web3 development. I know that is kind of vague, but let's see what that actually means. So, when I say it's a complete platform for Web3 development, it just means that we are your one-stop shop for everything related to Web3 development. We have got APIs, we have got SDKs. You want to launch your own rollup? We got you. You want account abstraction infrastructure? We have it. Let me just quickly go into each of these for a little bit more depth. So, when I say we have APIs, we have, first of all, the Node API, which is the standard API given to us by blockchain nodes, which includes, let's search for Rootstock in Alchemy docs. So you can access Alchemy docs at docs.alchemy.com. And we have got docs for all the chains that we support. Today, we're looking at Rootstock. And if we go to Rootstock API endpoints, you can see all of these APIs. We support all of these APIs on Rootstock, and this is the standard Node API. Now, all of these methods, they do different things, and you can just click on each method to see what that method does. For example, if we look at ETH get balance, right? This method, it returns the balance of the account of a given address. It basically means that this endpoint, when you call this endpoint, it gives you the balance of the native currency of the blockchain that you're calling this endpoint on for that address. So for example, if we have an example here where we have this address, and we're saying we need the address for we need the balance for this address on the latest block. So what we will do is we will just try this method right here. We have in browser try requests. It will make that request and it will get back to us with a result. This result is in hexadecimal format, so we can convert this into decimal to see what the current ETH balance of this address is. Right now, this is showing the ETH balance because we're calling this on ETH mainnet, But what we can do is we can call this method on Rootstock mainnet to get the RBTC balance, because that's the native currency of Rootstock. So all of these APIs are compatible with Rootstock because Rootstock is EVM compatible, and this is the standard Node API. Next, we support APIs which are not Node APIs. These are not standard APIs. These are created by Alchemy to make your life easier as a developer. This includes our NFT API to get information about NFTs, which has endpoints like NFTs by owner. So basically, you can provide an address and see all the NFTs which are owned by that address. We can see, we can get you can provide the NFT address and see all the owners for that address. Now, similarly, we have a lot of helpful endpoints for NFT API. One of the endpoints is this one, for example, floor prices by slug. So you can basically enter the slug for any NFT collection. In this case, it is Bored Ape. And you can call this endpoint and see what the current floor price for that collection is. So all of these helpful endpoints. This is one of our read APIs, NFT API. Next, we have transfers API, which gives you all of the transfer data for a specific address. You can see all the transactions which were sent to that address, which were received to that address, and it has useful filters like, from address to address, contract addresses, if you want to filter those transactions for specific contracts. And if you want to see, for example, just ERC20 token, transactions, we have those filters as well. Next, we have the transactions receipts API. This is used to get a transaction receipt as defined by the name. And then finally, we have the token API and the prices API. The token API gives you data specific to tokens. So for example, you can select, there's this API called token metadata, which is used to get the metadata for a specific token. So for example, if we call this API with the address of USDT contract, it will give us the logo for that, it will give us the symbol and all of the related info. And finally, we have the prices API. This is just to get the current price of any crypto. So for example, in this case here we have ETH, we make this request and we get the current price of ETH in USD. And those are our APIs. We also talked about other services that we support have subgraphs. Subgraphs are tools which you can use to create custom GraphQL APIs for your own app. And we support subgraphs on various different networks. So you can check that out in our docs. We also have webhooks. Webhooks are used to, you can set up webhooks for specific on-chain events. And whenever that event happens, Alchemy will notify you so you can take certain actions in your app. You can create custom webhooks. We also have transaction simulation APIs. And what this basically means is before even sending a transaction, you can use this API to see what effect it will have on chain. So this is used for things like, let's say when a developer wants to send a transaction on chain, let's say you're building a wallet. So before they send that transaction, you can show, okay, if you send this transaction, this will deduct 20 USDT from your balance. You will get this NFT. So even before sending that transaction, you can show that using the transaction simulation API. We have the whole account abstraction infrastructure, which includes the bundler API, the gas manager API, and our SDK, which is called AccountKit. And using all of these tools, you can create smart wallets, right? Which is gonna help us bring the next billion users on chain. Because in that case, they do not need to manage their keys. It just makes the life of users much easier, and they can just log in with Google or log in with GitHub just like Web 2. They also do not need to sign transactions each time for example, when you are going to send a transaction on MetaMask, it asks you to approve each time when you're buying an NFT or anything. With smart wallets, you can just abstract all of that away and have users feel like they're using a Web2 application. So that is all of the APIs and the tools that we support. We do support these tools on different chains, including Rootstock. We have SDKs to make your life even easier. We have the Alchemy SDK and the account abstraction SDK, which I just talked about a little bit. In addition to that, we have tools like Alchemy Dashboard, a beautiful dashboard which shows you all the analytics related to your apps, alerts, and reporting. We have the sandbox to just make in-browser, API requests, and much more. And of course, we do support rollups. So if you want to launch your own chain, you can do so at Alchemy. These are all the tools that we support for developers, for chains, but we also do education. So we have a program called Alchemy University where you can learn about, all about blockchain and Web3 development in detail. With all of that out of the way, let us go. Let us continue with our session and focus on our topic for today, which is APIs for getting on-chain data. That is what we're focusing today. So let's talk about why do we even need APIs, in this case. Well, we need APIs to get, blockchain data. So if you're building a Web3 application, for example, look at Rootstock Explorer, right? Here you see that in this case, this is displaying us the balance of for this address, and we can see it has 3.3 BTC or 477,000 RUSDT. Now, you need to fetch this data from somewhere to display on your apps, right? And that is where Alchemy comes in. I just explained to you guys how to fetch the native currency balance using ETH_GET_BALANCE API. And this slide is just showing you the same thing, where you can see we have this address, we are calling the ETH_GET_BALANCE method, and we are getting the result, which is this string, which is in hexadecimal. And when we convert this string to ETH, we can see, oh, okay, this address has 29 ETH balance. So that is APIs for getting on-chain data. Let's look at a real-world example. A real-world example would be OpenSea. OpenSea is one of our customers, and when you go to OpenSea, you see all of these NFTs, all of this data. They fetch this data through Alchemy and display you here. Now, let's look at the two kinds of APIs, which I briefly explained already, but we have the Node APIs, which are the standard APIs provided to us by blockchain nodes. They are available on any blockchain infrastructure provider, including us at Alchemy, and these include endpoints like each block number or each get balance, right? And then we have Alchemy's read APIs, which are created by us here at Alchemy, and these are custom APIs specific to Alchemy, and they are designed to make your life easy as a developer. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. So if we go back to our developer docs and look at the token API, for example, let's look at token API endpoints. So let's look at the token balances by wallet API. This API returns ERC20 token balances for all tokens the given address has ever transacted with. And so, what this basically does is I will provide my address in here and it will output me my balance for all the ERC20 tokens that I hold, right? Let's say I hold RUSDT, I hold WBTC, right? And I call this API with my address. It will give me the balance of those tokens that I hold. Let's look at how would we achieve a similar thing if we were to do this with Node API. Actually, before that, let me give you a real example of this, just running it in here in the browser. So I will provide this address here just for reference, which is just a address on Rootstock. This one, you can see it on Rootstock Explorer that this address right now holds 3.3 WRBTC and 477,000 RUSDT. So if I copy this address, I go back to Alchemy docs, I provide this address here, and I select that I need ERC20 token balance, and then we call this API. We see that we get the token balances, and we have the contract address and the token balance for that contract. Now, further, what we can do is we can just copy this contract address and we can go to token metadata by contract API to fetch the metadata for this contract. Now, if I click try it here, you can see this is actually WETH. So this must have been updated. Let's see. WRBTC and RUSDT. Let's see. I might have supplied the wrong address. This is the address. Okay. I think okay, the issue is that we're calling this on ETH mainnet. We're supposed to call this on Rootstock mainnet so that we get data on Rootstock. Apparently, that address was holding WETH on ETH mainnet, and that's why we were getting that. So if I just switch my network here to Rootstock mainnet, and now we call this API with the same address, and we try it with the token specification of ERC20. Now we see that we get the balance back for two contract addresses, which are WBTC and USDT. And we get the contract address back and the token balance back. We can convert this token balance to human rootable form by just converting this hex to decimal and the contract address. What we can further do is we can go to this endpoint called token metadata by contract, and we can just get the metadata for this contract. So you can see this is wrapped BTC, WRBTC. So now what we get back is the token for which that address is holding the balance, and the symbol of the token, the name of the token, and of course the balance of that token that the address is holding. Just with two API calls, we get all of this data. Let's look at how we would do this if we were to do it with the standard Node API. If we were to do it with standard Node API, we would have to use an API called ETH call. And what this API does is it executes a new message call immediately without creating a transactions on the blockchain. I know that is again kind of vague, but let me explain what that means. That just means that you can call any method on chain using this API without creating a write transaction on chain. So it's kind of the same as transaction simulation. Actually, this API is used under the hood for transaction simulation API. So basically, you can call any method on chain, get back the data, and you haven't even sent a transaction on chain. So using this API, what we do is we would go to the WRBTC contract on chain. We would call the get balance function on WRBTC to get the balance of WRBTC, and then we would go on chain to see the contract of RUSDT and call the get balance method using ETH call on this to get the balance of these. But even before that, we wouldn't even know what, like, if our address holds these tokens. So to get that, we would have to call ETH catalogs API, and with this API, we would provide that address here. We would just determine based on the logs that we get if this address has ever interacted with those contract addresses. And so it's just, what I'm trying to say is that's a lot of work. You need to go through all of the logs. You then need to make these individual requests to these contract addresses. What Alchemy's token API does is it has all of that covered for you. You just provide the token address and we give you back all of the tokens and the balance that this address holds. So that is the difference between Alchemy's Read APIs and the standard Node APIs. Of course, we support both, but Read APIs makes your life a little bit easier as a developer. Now, there's a specific reason why I was talking about Read APIs all this time and specifically Token API. And that's because if we go to Alchemy dashboard and then chains and then search for Rootstock, you can see that right now the supported services on Rootstock are Node API, Token API, and Transfers API. So these are the services we support on Rootstock right now, with support for more coming soon. And the reason for explaining all of that was because we're gonna build a dApp using these APIs right now on Rootstock. So just so you have context on these APIs, that's why I was explaining that. So before we move on to build the demo, I just want to mention that you can go to docs.alchemy.com to get information on any of our APIs, any of our tools, just in case if you need to come back to this in the future. So I already mentioned the services that we support on Rootstock right now. Now let's go on and build a dApp on Rootstock using Alchemy and AI tools. The app will look like this. Actually, can show you the app here. It is live and it is a simple app called Tokenverse, which gives us the ERC20 token balance on the Rootstock blockchain for any address. So if we go back here and provide the same address to this app, what it will do is it will load the token balances. So it's showing us, it has this address has 3.2 wrapped PTC and this amount of our USDT, similar to how the Explorer was showing us. So this is just a simple app to demonstrate the use of Alchemy's token API and how you can build these dApps on Rootstock using Alchemy. So if you are joining here live, the best part is you can follow along. You don't even have to have an environment set up because we're using this tool called Bolt. So you just need to go to bolt.new. And once you go here, this is an AI editor and site creator. So we will build this app just by using this. You will see how easy it is to get this app up and running within minutes. Let's get started. But before we get started, you need an account on Alchemy. Why do we need that? Because we're going to use Alchemy's token API to fetch all of that data. So if you don't have an account already, you can go to dashboard.alchemy.com. Let me actually go here in incognito mode so you can see. So you go to dashboard.alchemy.com and you either sign in with Google, sign in with SSO, or just with email and password. Once you have your account, you should see your dashboard look like this. You might not have any analytics initially because you have not created any app yet. But I see that here. But you can see once you start creating apps, you will see analytics like this. So I've sent 9.3 million requests already today. By the way, that's not me. My whole team is sending that. I'm not sending 9.3 million requests per day.
Fair enough.
So you can see all of these good analytics being shown here. We have the request health, the requests, the weekly request growth, weekly CU growth, all of that good data. So once you have your dashboard, you will click here on create a new app. And then let's create a new app for this demo. We will call it Rootstock Demo. And you can provide a description if you want to. And then let's select our use case. We're using this app to get data, right, which is token data. So let's just call it DeFi, right? We're getting on-chain data, so we're using it for DeFi. Rootstock demo. Let's see what's happening. Let's try it again. Rootstock demo DeFi. Create a new app. Okay, there we are. Now we select the chain that we need to create this app on. We will select Rootstock from here. Let's search Rootstock. There we go. The beautiful Rootstock logo. Let's create next. And you will see all of the services we have available on this app. So you can select all the services that you need to activate on this app. Right now, we're just going to use Token API, and Node API is just the standard API. So we'll keep it there. We will then create the app. Once the app is created, we will see our network URL here. So this includes your API key at the end. So after we do, this is your API key, and this is the whole URL which you can use to make requests on Rootstock mainnet. Similarly, you can select your, you can make requests on testnet. So in that case, you will see the network URL for the testnet. This just gives you a good starting point. This is the code that you can use in JavaScript to make this request. Similarly, you can select different languages just to get started. We're not going to use it because we're using the AI editor. And then also, of course, you can select SDKs in which you need the code, the starter code, which is a pretty handy feature. You can then go back and also you see your API key here in top right. So this is what we will need for this demo, basically just an API key to make requests on the Rootstock mainnet. So I will go back to my AI editor and we will just make this app without even coding by just prompting. I'm gonna say, gonna come here and I will say, and prompting is the most important part. This is learning some prompt engineering here. So you can say, help me create a beautiful, simple Next.js web application called Tokenverse, and we can say which has the following functionality. The functionality of our app is that it has a search field at the top of the page, right? We just saw that, which accepts a blockchain address on the rootstock blockchain, right? It then, what it does after is it then displays it then, so basically we have the search field, it accepts a blockchain address, and when the user hits enter or get details button, it fetches the info about the ERC tokens held by that address and the balance held, right? That's what we're doing basically. It then displays that information in a beautiful format. And to achieve this, it uses the token API from Alchemy, and specifically the API endpoint called token balances by wallet. And then we can say which looks like this. And then here we just go back to Alchemy docs. So let me go back to Alchemy docs and go to the token API. So we can see the token API endpoints. We go back to the token balances by wallet endpoint, and we will create the same request here. So we provide that address. that we were using before on the Rootstock mainnet. We provide the token specification ERC20. So we copy this request, and here you can see this is using an API key called docs demo. We can replace this with our own API key, which will do this further. But for now, let's just copy this request. So we can say the request for this API looks like this, and the response for this API will look like this, right? This was the response we were getting. And then we just hit enter. That's all we need to do, prompting. That is the beautiful part about the AI age, that you can just create anything by just prompting. And it's that easy to spin up apps on these blockchains using Alchemy. This AI code editor, it already has some UI components, so it's going to use that. And I will explain this code just in a second once it creates it, so we don't have to do this manual labor. So let's see the preview. There we go. It created the Tokenverse app for us. Let's actually try to use it. So I'm gonna come back to here. I will provide the address. Let's just get details. It's not working. And the reason for that is because we have not provided our API key. So let's go back to our page and see what's going on here. This is our page file. It is importing a token search. This is the standard, the UI library that it's integrated with. So we have let's go to the components token search, and here what it is doing is creating the interfaces for the request and response, which we have already provided. And then in the token search component, it uses state for our address just to keep track of that. And of course, again, state to keep track of loading state. And finally, for the data. And we can see here is where the request is being formed. And here it is making the request to Alchemy API. Right now it's using the docs demo key because that's what we provided in our request. This will not work on your application because the docs demo key only works on docs. So now what we need is our rootstock API key. So we copy this key. I do not recommend pasting it here directly in your code. You should use environment variables, but for the sake of this demo, we will use it here. So we provided this API key here, and it should hopefully now work. So what we're doing is we're fetching the token balance. It is making a request to Alchemy on the URL that we provided, and it just gets back that data and displays it. And this is just the handle submit button. And then it also formats the balance to a human readable form, which is pretty cool. This is just some CSS using Tailwind, which makes this app beautiful. And that's a simple Next.js application. So let's save this and see if it works. So I'm gonna try this again, and we can see the wallet details. We have the address and the token. So the first token it's just getting the token address because we have not used the get token metadata API yet to get the metadata for this token, which is WRBTC, which we have already seen. But we get the balance, right? So it has 3.2 WRBTC, and we have this amount of RUSDT, which we will find out now. So we can see it is not showing us the contract information, which is it should show us the symbol of the contract and the name. So let's integrate that into our app. We will go back to our prompt engineering, and we will say can you display the symbol? Okay, let's see. Can you display the token symbol and balance in human readable format? And then we can say you can use this endpoint for getting token metadata. And then we will just provide it with the request for that endpoint, which is token metadata by contract. And let's just use one of these contract addresses to construct the request here. So going back here, we will provide this address and see if it works. There we go. It is wrapped BTC. So we have formed this request. We will copy this request here, go back to our AI editor. We will provide the request. Instead of docs demo, I'm just gonna change it to our API key directly here because I'm gonna delete this app after this anyways. So we provide that request, and then for the response, we will just copy the response and come back. And now we just wait for AI to do our work. So it's just writing that token search file again to make another request. Once it gets the contract address, it makes another request to get contract details, and then it just shows us that data. So we'll wait for it to finish, and there we go. So let's copy this address again and try it here again. There we go. We are now getting the name of the token, which is wrapped BTC. We're getting the symbol, we're getting the contract address, and the balance that it holds for that token. Isn't that cool? That literally took us 5 minutes to create. So that's how we can create a dApp using Alchemy on the Rootstock blockchain. And yeah, that's all from my side. We went through what Alchemy is, what services we provide, the Node APIs, the Alchemy's Read APIs, and building a dApp on Rootstock using Alchemy. And that's it. My name is Sahil, and if you would like to give me a follow on Twitter, that's my handle. And also follow Rootstock and Alchemy.
Nice one. Thanks so much, Sahil. I was going to say it only took a couple of clicks, but it got completely dark in London. So it's nighttime now here and I look like a ghost. But that's okay. In reality, it did only take a couple of, what shall we say, a couple of prompts
Yes.
to write that down. So that was an add-on. I did not expect today to do any prompt engineering. So thanks for that, Sahil. That was super cool. I'll definitely check it out myself. Before we let you go, I just have a couple of quick questions. One was, obviously there's AI and we can use our creativity to create super easy. We've seen that. But if somebody wanted to maybe follow more of a kind of traditional tutorial on how to use any APIs or SDKs, where's the best place to go?
You can check out Alchemy University, which is our program where we teach you blockchain development from scratch, where you can set up, the whole coding environment. We also teach you smart contracts and all of that. Our YouTube is also a good resource. And so, yeah, you can check out those two resources for learning how to build apps using Alchemy in a traditional way. I just wanted to show it using AI here because I want developers to build apps as quickly as possible on Alchemy, on Rootstock. So I don't want them to wait. And that's why we went with AI tools here.
Yeah, of course, no, and I'm glad we did. So thanks for that. Cool. I also wanted to ask you about the Alchemy University, but you just mentioned it yourself. So my last question to you is, what's your advice for somebody who's never used any Alchemy SDKs or APIs, any services before, just getting started with the development? What's the number one thing to do?
Well, the number one thing I would say is to just learn blockchain basics, how everything works. So once you have learned that, once you know how blocks work, how blockchain work, it's gonna make much more sense to you because all of these APIs, for example, when I showed you that we were here, in this, we were calling the ETH call. If we go back to ETH call, let's refresh the page so it comes up here. So one of the parameters that this API takes is, first of all, you provide the transaction object, but then you provide on what block do you need this information on. You can say, you want this on the latest block or the earliest block or the pending block, right? But unless you know the blockchain basics, unless you know what is a, latest block, what is a pending block, you won't really understand these APIs in full depth. So it is very important to have those basics covered, which you can learn at Alchemy University, and also learn smart contract development, because I think once you have that whole information from, creating smart contracts to using APIs to knowing what blockchain is, it's all gonna come together and make much more sense. Which all of this you can learn at Alchemy University, as I mentioned. So that's my number one advice.
Nice one. I'm back there. Makes a lot of sense. All right, very cool. Thanks, Sahil. Thanks for coming again. Really enjoyed that. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon. And to everybody who's watching, I just would like to, as usual, to invite you, if you haven't yet joined the Rootstock community on Discord, join our builders community, and happy